It was 11:42 p.m. when my phone rang, the name Mom glowing like a threat. Claire, honey. We're going to lose the house. I was halfway through microwaving the cheapest ramen I could find at the gas station near the hospital. My scrubs still clung to the heat of the day, soaked in sweat and antiseptic. I stared at the name on my screen and didn't answer immediately. My thumb hovered over the green button like it was a detonator. The last time I'd spoken to my mother after 11 p.m., she'd told me not to come home. Logan needs privacy, she'd said. That night, I curled up in the back seat of my Honda Civic, too proud to call Ashley, too ashamed to cry. I picked up. Her voice cracked from the start. Sweetheart, I wouldn't call if it weren't urgent. Hi, Mom, I said flatly, stirring the dried noodles with a plastic fork. What's going on? I didn't know who else to turn to. The mortgage is, well, we're behind. Very behind. They're going to foreclose. The notice came today. We're short. About $280,000. I choked. You're short what, she sobbed. Real practiced sobs that rang more like a sales pitch than grief. It's all going so fast, Claire. I tried to make it work. I thought Logan's business would cover the bills, but he's been struggling too, and with the market the way it is. I leaned against the edge of the counter, ramen forgotten. What happened to Grandpa's inheritance? Silence. Then Logan needed startup capital. You know how hard it is for young men in this economy. I'm 2 years older than him, I muttered. He's building something, Claire. You know how much pressure is on him as the only man in the family. Frank was supposed to help, but he's overseas now. I glanced at the cracked wall above the radiator. The paint was peeling, the windows fogged with age. My apartment was smaller than the garage at Grandpa's house, and 10 times lonelier. That house, I said almost to myself. I remember Logan's crew repainting it the summer before he launched his company. You said it was practice. I guess now I know who paid for the paint. Please, don't be cruel, she sniffled. It's the family home. It's all we have left. If we lose, that we lose everything. My throat tightened. We. The last time we had included me, I was in braces. I can't conjure money out of nowhere. I said, already walking to the nightstand where I kept my phone charger and, more importantly, my bank login. We just need a little help. A bridge until Logan gets a new investor. Your job is secure, right? Maybe a loan secure. Sure. Except I was one bad shift away from collapsing. The overtime bonuses I fought for barely covered rent, let alone the dental work I'd been putting off for 2 years. I typed in my password. The screen loaded. My savings account, $3,249, checking 312.24s. My chest tightened. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the numbers. You still there, honey? Yeah, I said softly. I'm here. I knew you'd understand. You've always had such a big heart. My stomach turned. All I'd ever wanted was to be seen as more than a fallback plan. And yet, here we were. Again. I'll think about it, I said. Oh, Claire, thank you, I said. I'll think about it. That's not a yes. Silence again. This time heavier. We hung up not long after. She blessed me 6 different ways before the line went dead. I sat on the edge of the bed, ramen still untouched. My fingers hovered above the calculator app. It was automatic cutback on groceries. Push the dental work another year, skip the weekend shifts with Ashley. I looked out the window. It was pitch dark. No moon, just the neon flicker of the gas station sign blinking red, white, red across the cracked sidewalk below. Funny. You always find me when you need something. The front door had barely clicked shut behind me before she engulfed me in her vanilla-scented embrace, all smiles and perfume too thick for June. Her voice echoed through the entryway like a pastor greeting a donor at the altar. Behind her, the house looked cleaner than I remembered, like someone had scrubbed away the stains but couldn't hide the age. I stepped inside, suitcase still in hand. You didn't have to. Nonsense, she interrupted. Family deserves celebration. You deserve celebration. She turned to the dining room. Everyone, she's here. The Harper dining room hadn't changed much since I was a kid. Still too many framed cross stitches on the walls, still that chandelier, with one bulb flickering like it couldn't decide if it wanted to die. But tonight, the table was set with silverware, polished for guests we didn't have, and the good wine glasses brought out from their tomb beneath the hutch. Dad was already seated quietly, swirling his drink. He gave me a small nod, the kind you give someone you haven't seen in a while, but never really knew. Across from him sat Logan, dressed in something that tried very hard to be casual, crisp button-down sleeves rolled up just enough to show off a watch that probably wasn't paid off. "Hey," he said, lifting his glass. "Look who finally made it." Before I could respond, his wife Vanessa stood. "Hi, Claire," she offered with a quiet smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I returned it with equal caution. "Vanessa. Nice to see you again." We sat. Plates already served still warm. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a medley of vegetables arranged like a Pinterest ad. I was halfway through my first bite when Mom raised her glass. "A toast," she said, eyes glistening. "To Claire, who came home when we needed her most. She's the reason this house is still ours." "To Claire," Dad echoed softly, more out of obligation than joy. "To responsibility," Logan added with a grin. "It's good someone's got it." The words hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa looked down at her plate. I forced a smile. To second chances. And remembering who gave them. Logan's grin faltered. Mom clapped her hands, missing or ignoring the tension entirely. As the conversation slipped into generic small-talk weather, grocery prices, the neighbor's new fence, I let my eyes wander. The living room wall across the hall was bare where Grandpa's portrait used to hang. I'd stared at that painting for hours as a kid, his stern eyes, his military medals, the slight tilt of his jaw like he dared you to disappoint him. Now it was gone, replaced by a watercolor landscape of a generic beach. "When did you take Grandpa down?" I asked. Mom blinked. "Oh, that. It didn't match the new theme. We're going lighter. He was the reason this house existed." I said more to myself than anyone. Vanessa finally looked up, her voice low, directed at Logan. "When are we leaving?" I caught it. Just barely. He didn't answer, just reached for his wine and nodded at something Mom said about hydrangeas. Later that night, after the laughter faded and the dishwasher hummed, I tiptoed into the kitchen. My old room had been turned into a storage closet, so I'd been assigned the guest room's same mattress from when Uncle Frank used to visit, still too firm, still creaking at every turn. I told them I was getting water, but I walked past the sink and toward the counter instead. Something had caught my eye during dinner, a corner of paper half tucked beneath a basket of mail. I pulled it out gently. A flyer. "Welcome to Clearwater Shores, waterfront luxury in Palm Coast, Florida." Pictures of modern white condos stared back at me. Oceanfront views, palm trees, a tagline in cursive, "Your next chapter starts here." A lump formed in my throat. I reached into my hoodie pocket, pulled out my phone, and snapped a photo. Before slipping the paper back exactly where I'd found it, I stood still for a moment in the dark kitchen, bathed in the soft hum of the fridge and the ticking of the wall clock. Last Christmas, Grandpa had asked to revise his will. He wanted to make things right, he said. Mom had waved him off, called it senility. Better to avoid chaos, she'd said. He's not thinking clearly. And just like that, he hadn't. But someone else had. That night, Claire sneaks into the hallway and quietly takes a photo of a paper on the kitchen counter, a Florida real estate flyer. "It's just a refinancing document," Mom said. "You're already doing so much. One last form, Claire." Her voice had that high, syrupy pitch she reserved for store clerks and southern gossip circles, sweet enough to stick, but not quite hide the rot underneath. She wore a floral blouse that flared around her arms like she might take off at any moment, and her lipstick was a shade too pink for someone about to hand over legal paperwork. We were sitting at the kitchen table, an assortment of pens and papers neatly stacked between us. The late June heat clung to the walls, and despite the ceiling fan spinning overhead, the air felt thick, humid, pressing, expectant. I glanced toward the window. Logan was outside, fiddling with the hose, pretending to water a bush that had died weeks ago. Whether he knew what Mom was doing inside or was just killing time, I couldn't tell. Didn't matter. This wasn't about him. Not right now. She slid a small stack of forms across the table, tapping them with a perfectly manicured nail. These are from the bank. Logan helped pull the paperwork together. It's basically a formality. I picked up the top sheet. Legal size 12-point font, dense paragraphs broken only by signature lines. I took my time. She fidgeted. I remember signing something like this when I was 17, I said, casually. You said it was for my learner's permit. She froze for a second, then offered a laugh, a beat too late. Oh, honey, that old thing. It ended up being Logan's truck loan. Well, she said with a shrug, that was a long time ago. We've all grown since then. I nodded slowly, flipping the page. There it was, line item number 7 on the third document, title transfer beneficiary, Claire Harper. Wait, I said, forehead creased. This puts the deed in my name. Mom leaned forward. Just technically. The bank prefers it that way now. It's still your dad's place, obviously. We're just protecting the equity. I looked up. So it's protection. For you. For all of us, she said quickly. For the family. Sweetheart, you know how grateful we are. And this way, God forbid something happens. Things are clean. Easy. Right. I let the silence hang. Then I smiled. Of course. Let's do it. Her shoulders visibly dropped in relief. She handed me a pen like it was communion. I signed each page carefully, one by one, initials where needed, dates precisely written. When I reached the final signature line, she practically squealed. I'll get us some lemonade, she said already, halfway to the fridge. I watched her back as she moved too fast, too light. This was her victory dance, subtle and rehearsed. I knew that rhythm. I'd seen it when she sweet-talked the pharmacist out of full-price meds for Grandpa, when she maneuvered church ladies into cooking her casseroles for a month straight. But this time, she thought she'd danced me into something I didn't understand. Later that night, after they'd all gone to bed, and the house sank into quiet breathing, I sat on the guest bed with my laptop open and the signed documents scanned. I emailed them to Mitchell, my old college roommate's husband, now a real estate attorney in Raleigh. Subject line: review request. Urgent. Then I opened my bag and pulled out the photograph I'd taken from the hallway cabinet, the one of Grandpa in his army uniform, rigid but proud, taken long before dementia softened his edges. I stared at it for a moment. His eyes didn't smile, but they told the truth. This was yours first, I whispered. I slid the photo into a side pouch in my purse. Not a trophy. A keepsake. My own quiet claim to legacy. Margaret had hugged me after I signed, arms tight, body tense. She called it a thank you. I called it what it was, a burial shroud in advance. She thought she'd sealed something, but only one of us had read the clause carefully. Only one of us had meant what she signed. Claire opens her notes app. Step 1. Let them underestimate me. The curtains were gone. The rose bushes were pulled. The front door creaked open into silence. It took me 3 tries to unlock it. My key, though correct, met resistance, as if the house itself didn't know who I was anymore. Or maybe it didn't want to remember. No shoes by the door. No shoes anywhere. The hardwood floors, once scuffed from years of pacing and slammed heels, had been wiped clean, too clean. The kitchen counters were bare. The fridge door hung ajar, unplugged. The air was neither warm nor cold. It just didn't smell like anything. Not cinnamon or dust or that faint sour trace of lemon pledge. Just nothing. Like a hotel room waiting for someone who never shows. I moved through the house like a ghost returning to her own grave. The couch was gone. The TV. Every piece of furniture, even the fake ficus by the stairs. Upstairs, the closet in the guest room hung open, its wire shelves vacant except for one bent hanger. Only the walls remained, and even those were scarred with freshly removed picture hooks. Tiny puncture wounds of a family that never intended to heal. I didn't call out. A neighbor across the street watered her lawn and gave a lazy wave when she saw me. Her expression didn't flicker, didn't shift. Just a generic pleasantry, as if this were any Tuesday, and nothing had burned down. They hadn't left in the dead of night. This wasn't rushed. This was planned. At the base of the staircase, half tucked under the welcome mat, lay a single white envelope. No name. I sat down on the last step. My legs didn't quite trust me to stand. The envelope was unsealed. Inside, a single sheet of printer paper. Thanks for fixing our debt, loser. We're in Boca. Don't call. M plus L plus V. My eyes didn't widen. No gasp. No trembling hand to mouth. Just stillness. The kind that fills a room after the oxygen's gone. I walked out to the porch, settled on the top step. The heat of early July settled around me like a fever I couldn't sweat out. I glanced toward the patch of dirt by the driveway where the rose bushes used to be. Gone. Yanked. The roots would have resisted. They were old. I planted them when I was 7, back when Grandpa let me dig in the sun with bare hands and no gloves. I chose the pink ones because they reminded me of the mints he kept in his coat pocket. He let me name them Alice, Dot, Ruth, Violet. Vanessa must have hated them. I don't know what stung more, the bushes being gone or the ground being so evenly leveled as if they'd never existed. No one had the decency to water them one last time. A wasp buzzed near my ankle. I didn't flinch. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped into the housing app. The page loaded slowly, signal weak. I refreshed. There it was. Owner Claire Harper. I smiled. A short, tight thing. Not joy, not even relief. Certainty. I looked back at the hollow house behind me, stripped, scrubbed, emptied. They'd taken everything that could fit in a moving truck and left the one thing that mattered most. I whispered, they sold a house they didn't own. I stared at the blinking cursor for a moment longer, then hit send. My fingers didn't hesitate. My heartbeat didn't stutter. Let them read it in Boca. Mitchell's office was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday morning. His walls were lined with law books, outdated tax codes, and yellowing folders that smelled like old coffee and closing arguments. A small fan hummed near the window, stirring air that didn't want to move. Mitchell adjusted his glasses and scanned the stack of documents I'd handed him. "Claire, you did everything right," he murmured. "Title transfer, notarization, recorded deed, your signature's clean, witnessed, initialed. Everything's airtight. Tell that to the Florida realtor who listed my house," I muttered. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Already drafting notice to the buyer's agent. They'll need to cease all processing, title is in dispute now." My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I declined. Another buzz, this time a text. "Need to talk. It's Logan. Please." I didn't respond. Mitchell leaned back. "This is bold. They tried to sell a property they legally removed themselves from. We're well within grounds to file a temporary injunction." I tilted my head. "No criminal charges yet?" He raised an eyebrow. "You want to go nuclear?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the printout I'd found on the kitchen counter the night I took that photo, the real estate flyer. Glossy, folded down the middle. Boca Raton. New listing. Ocean view. I placed it in front of him. Mitchell gave a low whistle. "Vanessa's name is on this." I nodded. But not on any ownership document, just a Florida address and a dream. His fingers resumed dancing across the keys. "We'll tag the property in Buncombe County with disputed title status, buyer can't close with that in place. I'll also send a cease and desist to the listing agent." I exhaled slowly. And the locks. Legal owner can change them at any time. That was all I needed. By late afternoon, I stood at the porch of my own house, a locksmith beside me. He was quick, efficient, didn't ask questions. The new keys felt heavier in my hand. Or maybe it was just the weight of finally holding something that couldn't be taken from me again. That night I sat at Mitchell's desk once more. He pushed a small folder toward me. "I've filed for fraud investigation in case you want to escalate. This is the evidence packet. Bank transfers, timeline, notarized deeds. Margaret and Logan, if this goes forward, are both looking at attempted real estate fraud. It won't be pretty." "Good," I said almost too softly. His gaze was steady. "You could press charges now." I let the thought sit between us. The idea of Logan in a courtroom, Margaret trying to explain herself to a judge instead of manipulating me over the phone, it was tempting. So tempting. But not yet. I smiled just a little. They taught me to read. Just not the fine print. Later that night, I opened Facebook for the first time in months. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then settled. They taught me to read. Just not the fine print. I posted it without tagging anyone. The first like came almost instantly, then another, then a dozen. A minute later, a notification popped. "Vanessa Logan reacted to your post." I didn't respond. I just watched the ripples begin. 4 missed calls, all from a Boca Raton area code. I let the 5th one ring just long enough to hurt. It was barely 700 a.m., and the rain tapped like guilt against my kitchen window. Gray light filtered through the blinds, blurring the outlines of dirty dishes and unopened mail. My phone buzzed again on the counter, vibrating in short, needy bursts like a tantrum. Boca Raton FL. Incoming call. I sipped my coffee. Let it ring. When the screen went dark, I exhaled. Then it lit up again. 6th time. I picked up. Claire Margaret's voice spilled out sharp with tension disguised as concern. "Sweetheart, there's been a situation." I leaned against the fridge. "Morning, Mom." She sighed. "It's the bank. They froze the account. I tried to pay the movers and, well, something's wrong. The funds aren't there. And the Florida escrow people." A shout burst from the background. "Logan. She lied. She set us up." Margaret lowered her voice. "Ignore him. He's just stressed." I tapped the speakerphone icon. Her voice filled the apartment like mold. "Claire, honey, could you please call the county, or the lawyer or whoever, and just undo whatever misunderstanding this is? We know you're upset, but this is serious." My eyes scanned the subject line of a new email, title freeze confirmed. Buncombe County Clerk from Mitchell. I clicked it open, letting Margaret ramble. "Claire. Status update: disputed title flag is now visible in statewide records. Funds frozen pending investigation. Your ownership remains legally valid. Attached PDF confirmation plus C. Future escalation path. Criminal ac civil. Also, buyer's agent has backed off." I almost smiled. Margaret's voice cracked. "Claire, it's just a big mess, and I know you never wanted any of this. If you could just talk to someone." "Enjoy the Florida heat?" I asked sweetly. Silence. Then Logan again, loud and unfiltered. "You're sick. You played us." Margaret hissed something to him, probably covering the phone, but I'd already heard enough. "You know," I said, pulling up an old memory like peeling off a scab when I turned 17. "You forgot my birthday." "Claire, please." But Logan got a $500 check and a card that said, "For your bright future." That was a different time. You know how things were back then. "Yeah," I said. "Unfair." "Claire, if we lose this deal, we lose everything. You left me homeless once. I left you houseless. Balance." And I ended the call. The phone rested on the counter for a moment, quiet at last. Then I picked it up, opened the call log, and took a screenshot, just in case. Then I opened my laptop. Drafted a new email to Mitchell, subject contingency phase 2. Do not settle Mitchell. Proceed with escalation if contacted. Do not engage in negotiation or compromise without my explicit approval. C. I attached the call screenshot for good measure. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, I felt clean. I didn't speak. The motel room echoed behind him, cheap acoustics, a hollow drip from a bathroom faucet. I imagined him hunched on the edge of a too-firm mattress, blinking into the glow of a cracked phone screen, the kind of setting where shame has nowhere to hide. I woke up and she was just gone, he choked. Left a note and a bag of snacks for the girls. That's it. I sipped my tea. Let the silence expand. She found it all. The letters. The title, Transfer Your Messages. I didn't think she'd care. She barely talked at dinner. She was watching, I said. He sniffled. It's not like that. You know I didn't mean I cut him off. No. You meant it. There was a pause long enough to matter. Then he fumbled for sympathy. They're your parents too, Claire. You think this doesn't hurt me? We were just trying to save yourselves. I finished for him. The house, the lie, the illusion. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, dusk painted the neighborhood in tired oranges and grays. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. My reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar still me, but without the usual weight behind the eyes. You broke your family, I said, chasing the only one who never owed you anything. The phone went quiet. I thought he'd hung up. But then came a soft, desperate whisper. I didn't know what else to do. I ended the call. Moments later, my phone buzzed again, this time from Mitchell. Mitchell bank records confirm full documentation trail. Margaret moved inheritance to Logan's LLC in 2019. Clear fraud. You're fully protected. We can file to reclaim the account. I replied simply, good. Hold filing. Let them twist first. I set the phone down, but it buzzed again. This time, it was different. New email from Vanessa Harper. Subject line. I'm sorry. And thank you. Claire. I read everything. What you sent, what you didn't. I saw the documents, the signed transfer, the way he and your mom talked about you when they thought I wasn't listening. You were right. About all of it. I didn't have the courage to speak then, but I do now. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Vanessa, I stared at it for a long time. Vanessa, the quiet one, the one who smiled like she was apologizing for existing. The one who always stood 2 steps behind Logan, even at her own wedding reception. And now she was gone from him, from the lie, from whatever life she pretended was real. I opened a reply window, typed 2 words, not yet. Then I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and let the dark settle around me like an old friend. Some reckonings weren't loud. Some were just waiting. I sat across from Mitchell, who had swapped his usual coffee for an energy drink, a sign that war in legal terms had officially begun. The conference room buzzed faintly with fluorescent lighting. No drama, no raised voices, just the quiet precision of escalation. He handed me the packet without ceremony. This is the civil complaint. Unauthorized attempted conveyance of property not legally held, naming Margaret and Logan Harper. I flipped through the pages, scanning for errors. There were none. Mitchell didn't do sloppy. I've drafted the motion to freeze her account, he continued. It's tied to the buyer's earnest deposit. Once flagged for fraud, her assets in that escrow will be locked pending review. I nodded. Good. He raised an eyebrow. You're oddly calm. I'm not here to scream, I said. I'm here to gut them slowly. Back home, I cleared the dining table. Legal printouts, binder clips, post-it flags. My kitchen smelled like burnt toast and retribution. I opened my laptop and filed the HOA complaint, anonymous, factual, damning. Margaret had listed the property under her name, which directly violated Section 14B of the Neighborhood Agreement. No unauthorized representation of title permitted. HOA boards love rules. They also love scandal. I wasn't just attacking the foundation. I was removing beams quietly. I marked off each move on a yellow legal pad, civil complaint filed, escrow motion submitted, HOA violation reported, fake listing archived. Title flag confirmed by county clerk. I paused only to refill my glass of water. Then I checked the county website. There it was. Property alert status. Active case. Ref 5403 CF disputed title claim, pending civil resolution. Mitchell called just after 9 p.m. They're boxed in, he said. The fraud alert's now part of the public register. No broker will touch them. No bank will authorize anything. How long? Minimum 90 days. Possibly longer depending on their defense, which is already full of holes. I let that hang for a moment. Claire, he added gently, are you sure you don't want to pursue criminal charges? Not yet. Why not? Because I'm still building the case they don't see coming. Later that night, I stood in front of my battle wall, a corkboard draped in timelines, screenshots, and photos. It looked like something out of a crime procedural. But to me, it was just architecture, structural control. When I was 9, I used to draw blueprints, escape routes for our house in case of fire. I think some part of me knew even then it wasn't the flames I feared. It was the people standing inside with matches. I pulled down one photo, Grandpa's porch swing, faded and soft. In its place, I pinned a glossy printout, Margaret's real estate listing. Charming colonial, recently restored, motivated seller. Bold font, smiling stock photo, full lie. Underneath, I scribbled in red ink, control the story, control the outcome. Then I stepped back, looked at the wall, and smiled. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rewriting the ending. It was the soft knock of rain against glass that made me check the mail again. Most days I ignored the little tin box outside my door. Anything urgent came to my phone, and everything else was noise. But this afternoon, as thunder muttered somewhere in the mountains, I opened the rusted lid and saw it. A forwarded letter. Red stamped twice. Yellow label, undeliverable, readdressed. I knew the handwriting before I even flipped it over. Vanessa. I sat in the sunroom, legs tucked under me, the letter unopened in my lap. The air smelled like wet earth and old rosemary. My tea went cold beside me. 8 weeks ago, the postmark read. She had written this before she left Logan, before she knew I was fighting back. I slid a finger under the seal. Claire, I don't know if this will reach you. I hope it does. I've written it 3 times already and torn it up each time. I never said what I needed to when you were standing in the room, and I think that's the coward in me. You always deserved better than silence. The page trembled just slightly in my hand. There's something I need to tell you. About that night 5 years ago. The night you came to the house after your lease fell through. You rang the bell twice. I was the one who saw you through the window. Margaret told Logan not to open the door. Said he needed privacy. Said having you here would ruin his rhythm. He said nothing. And I said less. You slept in your car that night, didn't you? I knew it, and I still didn't call. The ink blurred at the edge of one word, maybe rain, maybe a tear. I didn't know which hurt more. I remember that night now clearer than ever. The way the frost formed inside the windows. The condensation from my breath clouding the windshield. I had told myself it wasn't that cold. That I'd be fine. That maybe they didn't hear the bell. But they had. There's more. I knew about the plan to move. About the paperwork Margaret wanted you to sign. I didn't know every detail, but enough to know it wasn't right. She called it tidying loose ends. Logan said it was just how families do things. I said nothing because I was scared. Scared of being next. Scared that if I stood beside you, I'd be standing alone. That line hit like a slap I never saw coming. I watched you from across the table pretending everything was fine. I watched you fake laugh. I watched them celebrate your money and erase your name at the same time. I watched and I did nothing. And I need you to know I'm sorry. I leaned back, closed my eyes. Rain traced lines down the glass beside me. Vanessa's words didn't shock me, not really. They confirmed what I had known in my bones. I was always the placeholder, the helper, the shadow kept just out of frame. The next paragraph read, I've left Logan now. Took the kids. I didn't leave because of what he did to you. I left because I saw he could do it to them. That same silence, that same erasure. I couldn't pass it down. You don't owe anyone anything anymore, Claire, least of all them. My hand hovered over the flame of the small candle beside me, the letter folded into 4 neat corners. I lowered it, watched as the edges curled black, the flames licking away her guilt, her confession, her apologies. When it was nothing but ash in the ceramic bowl, I opened my journal. I wrote only her final line. You don't owe anyone anything anymore. Then I underlined it. Twice. I didn't ring the doorbell. I didn't need to. The box felt heavier than it was. Not because of its contents, but because of what they used to mean. Birth certificates, family photos, Logan's third-place soccer trophy, Margaret's wedding album wrapped in wax paper, a stack of brittle letters bound with a hair tie I hadn't seen since 2002. I set the box down on Uncle Frank's porch. The old wood creaked under my step just enough to let them know I was there if they were listening. The leaves stirred at my ankles, amber and ochre gathering like a quiet crowd. The door opened behind me, hinges whispering like an afterthought. Ronald stood there in a sweater too large for his frame, looking like someone playing the role of concerned father in a local theater production. Behind him, Margaret appeared. Silent. Blank. Logan leaned against the hallway wall, thin and tired, holding a coffee cup that didn't match the set. Uncle Frank emerged from the side door, brow furrowed, but said nothing. He watched me the way someone watches a campfire they're not sure will stay contained. I said it simply. This doesn't belong to me anymore. Margaret didn't flinch. Ronald scratched the back of his neck. Logan shifted his weight. I lifted the lid one last time, letting them see. Family documents sorted neatly. Photos labeled and sleeved. Everything that used to make a home feel inhabited. Except now, it felt like evidence from someone else's trial. Margaret's eyes flicked toward the wedding album. She reached forward, then stopped herself. Logan looked at the old trophies and whispered, I thought those were gone. They were, I said, until I realized I was the only one still carrying them. Ronald tried to chuckle. Well, look at you, all grown up and organized. Guess we taught you something after all. I met his eyes. You taught me to disappear, and then blamed me for doing it too well. He frowned. You should have just said thank you. That stopped me. I turned back around, slow and steady. My voice didn't rise. For what I asked. Being disposable. For every time you taught me my silence was the only thing of value in this family. Logan looked away. For covering your debts, signing your lies, holding your secrets like they were heirlooms. I took a step closer. I said thank you every time I came back. Every time I answered a call I shouldn't have. Every time I let myself believe it was going to be different. Margaret finally spoke. You always make everything so dramatic. I stared at her, not blinking. And you always mistake restraint for weakness. Uncle Frank cleared his throat, opened the screen door wider. You want some coffee, Claire? No, I said. But thanks. He gave me the smallest nod, one I hadn't earned but maybe finally didn't need to. I turned and walked down the steps, each footstep lighter than the one before. The air was crisp, early October, wrapping its fingers around my sleeves. I felt the wind press against my back like permission. Behind me, no one called out. No one followed. Just the sound of Ronald closing the door. Margaret's sigh carried away by the breeze, Logan's cup clinking against the banister. I didn't look back. Not until the sidewalk curved and I reached the old oak tree I used to climb as a child. I paused there, hand brushing its bark. In some other life, this might have been the part where I turned around, offered an olive branch, held out hope like a foolish gift. But not this time. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Scrolled past battle plans, scanned legal drafts, voice memos I recorded on sleepless nights. At the very bottom was a line I had written the day I moved out. The day I promised myself I'd never be the family scapegoat again. Leave nothing behind you didn't choose to carry. Today, I chose nothing. My father always said, "Don't touch what's not yours." So I opened the door and touched everything. The brass knob turned with a reluctant squeak. The wood groaned as if remembering its purpose. Ronald's old office hadn't been truly entered since before they vanished. They'd left the house in such haste or arrogance that they hadn't even bothered to lock it. The scent hit me first, a cocktail of old tobacco, lemon oil, and paper dust. The air felt heavier here, unmoved, like time had held its breath. The bookshelves still sagged under rows of financial manuals and framed degrees. An empty coffee mug sat where he'd last left it. A cracked leather chair faced the desk like a throne no one missed. I stepped inside. This was the room I was never allowed in. Not at 9 when I peeked in and saw the small safe half hidden behind a file cabinet, only to have the door slammed in my face so hard a painting came down. Not at 17 when I tried to hand him my scholarship letter and he said, "That's fine. Just leave it on the counter." He'd always drawn the line, his space, his rules. And now, his silence. I moved slowly, not reverent, just exact. I took down every trophy, every plaque with Harper & Co. etched into brass. I cleared the drawers, methodically stacking tax folders by year. A stack of torn receipts revealed a key, taped beneath the bottom file. I held it between my fingers and almost laughed. The safe was where I remembered. Small steel bolted into the back wall behind a row of irrelevant binders. I turned the dial once, twice, then stopped. No, I didn't need the combination, just the key. It clicked open with an anticlimactic sigh. Inside a sealed manila envelope, labeled in Grandpa's handwriting. I knew it instantly. I opened it with care, usually reserved for something sacred. It was the original will, dated, notarized, signed with deliberate strokes. Claire Harper, sole heir, full property rights, no secondary beneficiaries. The air in the room seemed to shift. The house didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like mine. I walked to the door, pulled a sticky note from my bag, and scribbled with a black marker, "Studio Harper." I pressed it onto the wood with the same hand that once reached for the doorknob and got swatted away. Let it be known this room no longer belonged to the man who hoarded silence and scorn. It belonged to the girl he ignored, the woman they all underestimated. I stood in the doorway for a while, letting the October light pour in behind me, casting long shadows across the rug. Somewhere outside, a squirrel darted across the porch railing. Life undisturbed. I pulled out my phone and texted Mitchell. "Me found original will. It's real." He replied in less than 30 seconds. "Mitchell, get it scanned, then locked up. This is the end game." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I stepped into the center of the room, turned in a slow circle, and breathed in deeply. My grandfather used to say, "People think homes are made of walls and roofs. They're not. Homes are made of choices, of who gets to stay and who doesn't." They all chose to leave. I chose to remain, not out of stubbornness but purpose. And now I would choose what stayed, what left, and what became something new. The envelope had dust along the seal and a date from 2014, the year he died, the year they buried more than a man. Mitchell adjusted his glasses with the same precision he used to draft affidavits. He'd been reading the original will for nearly 10 minutes now silently, as though deciphering a code written in grief and spite. I didn't interrupt. I knew what it said. I'd already read it 3 times, but watching him confirm it brought a strange satisfaction, not triumph, just alignment. The will in my hand was dated 5 weeks before Grandpa collapsed in the kitchen. It bore his clean signature, a notary's mark, and instructions clear enough for a child to follow. I was the sole heir, not co-heir, not contingent, not honorary. Sole. He had left everything to me. I compared it with the one your mother registered. Mitchell said finally. Hers is dated 2 years earlier. No notary, no witness signature, and this one, valid. Clean. Binding. He tapped the desk once, a soft thud of finality. They knew, I said. Mitchell didn't nod, but he didn't disagree either. They filed the earlier one on purpose. They buried the real one, he said. Same year he died. I watched the autumn leaves drift past the window. Yellow against blue. Slow and certain. Do you want to challenge it formally? He asked. We'd win. I thought about it. About courtrooms and subpoenas. About sitting across from Margaret while she smiled with that practiced tilt of her head. About Logan pretending not to look at the floor. About Ronald shrugging the way he always did when cornered. It's not that serious. But it was serious. And maybe that's why I didn't want to drag it out. Because this wasn't about punishing them anymore. It was about making the record reflect the truth. Publicly. Permanently. No lawsuits, I said. Just file it. Mitchell blinked, surprised. Are you sure truth doesn't need permission? By noon, the will had been scanned, uploaded, time-stamped, and entered into the county's public records. It was real now in a way they couldn't ignore, no longer buried in a locked drawer or guarded by their silence. I drafted a simple email to Margaret. No subject line. Attached the PDF copy of Grandpa's final will, one line in the body. Truth doesn't need permission. I clicked send. Then I sat back in my chair and waited. It took 3 hours. Her reply was only 2 words. Why now? No greeting, no punctuation, no warmth. I stared at the screen, rereading it like it might bloom into something human. It didn't. Not an apology, not a denial. Just a tremor behind a wall she'd built too high to climb down from. I didn't reply to her. I forwarded the email to Vanessa. Subject line, because silence ends here. There was power in restraint. Not the kind you flex to look noble, but the kind that leaves no ashes behind. I didn't need them ruined. I didn't even need them remorseful. I just needed the truth to stop living underground. They'd built their little empire on secrets. That house, that inheritance, that false sense of superiority. But the truth had no expiration date, and now it had a paper trail. Later that night, I walked through my grandfather's room again. I touched the dresser where he used to keep his cufflinks, still faintly smelling of cologne and cedar. I placed the certified will in the top drawer beneath a linen handkerchief folded too neatly to discard. Thank you, I said out loud. Not for the house, for the clarity. I didn't check in on them, but news travels, especially when it's ugly. The first message came from the HOA. Subject line, re-property status and resident restrictions. I almost didn't open it, thinking it was just another automated invoice, but the second line caught my eye. Please be advised, former residents Ronald and Margaret Harper have been formally banned from all Harper Ridge properties per Article 7.3 fraudulent misrepresentation. They used the word fraud. Officially, cold and clean. I read the sentence twice, then once more aloud, like trying to believe a prayer I'd stopped saying long ago. Fraud. Not misunderstanding. Not misfiled paperwork. Just truth, plain as ink. The screenshots came next. Vanessa sent one from her friend on the HOA board, a grainy photo of Ronald standing at the gate, red-faced and shouting at two uniformed agents while Margaret stood behind him, stone-still sunglasses hiding everything but shame. The caption read, "Security called. Escorted off the property." Ronald dropped his wallet, trying to argue. I studied their postures, the helpless tilt of Margaret's shoulders. The way Ronald still pointed, still commanded even when no one listened anymore. There was something pitiful in it. Not satisfying, just small. This was the man who once told me reputation is everything. Now he had none. The voicemail came later. I was slicing carrots when it buzzed. Logan's name flashed across the screen, but he didn't call again. Just the voicemail, 64 seconds long. I waited until the kettle finished boiling before I listened. "You won." His voice was tight, bruised. "You proud of yourself? You know Mom's eating at a food pantry now. You did that. You and your damn paperwork." A pause. A breath. Like he was waiting for me to say something back through the silence. "You always wanted to be the victim. Well, now you're the victor. Congrats." The call ended with a shaky sigh and the muffled click of him hanging up. I played it again. Then once more. Then I deleted it. Margaret was spotted at a church pantry 2 towns over. Not in our old neighborhood, too many familiar faces. I didn't go, of course, but someone posted a picture on the community board. She wore a beige jacket, hands clasped at her waist like she could still control the narrative if she looked clean enough. No one stood near her. The comments underneath were polite, uncomfortable, pitying. No one asked why she was there, and no one sat next to her either. I scrolled through it all from my couch. Sunlight pooled across the hardwood floor. The house was quiet, filled with only the hum of stability. No shouting, no unspoken expectations. Just space and breath and choices made without permission. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. I felt unhooked, unbraided from their chaos, untangled. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. They were the storm. I was the lightning rod. And now I wasn't. Later that night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat at the desk that once belonged to Ronald, and looked out over the backyard. The roses were growing back new roots, slow and quiet. No ceremony, just patience. The family had collapsed like a house of cards, and I hadn't even needed to blow. I whispered to no one in particular, "I'm not proud." I took a sip, closed my eyes. I'm free. The house smelled like rosemary garlic, and for the first time, laughter. It drifted down the hallway layered with soft jazz and clinking glassware. Someone was already on their second glass of wine, and someone else was asking if they could steal the potato recipe. I stirred the sauce with one hand and texted the grocery list to myself with the other. It felt absurd and perfect. I hadn't hosted anyone in this kitchen since moving back. I hadn't wanted to. But the walls were now painted warm cream, the counters sanded smooth. The old wallpaper blue roses Margaret swore were tasteful had been scraped and tossed. New shelves, open lighting. I kept the brass drawer handles, though. Grandpa's touch. There were 5 of us around the table, each with a story, each with a dish. Sam from the ER brought a mushroom tart he claimed he didn't even taste before baking. Carla brought wine. Ellie brought her girlfriend. The neighbor from next door knocked halfway through, holding a loaf of sourdough like it was a peace treaty. Then the doorbell rang again. Vanessa stood in the doorway with a foil-covered dish and uncertain eyes. Her coat was wrinkled and her shoes were wet from the grass. She didn't say a word, just looked at me like she'd rehearsed this moment too many times. "Pumpkin pie," she finally said, lifting the plate. I opened the door wider. Inside, no one questioned her presence. She slipped into the background like she had at every Harper dinner, except this time she poured herself a glass of wine and laughed at Carla's story about the janitor and the banana peel. When someone asked where the pie came from, Vanessa just smiled. Family recipe, she said, and I didn't flinch. The heart of the evening wasn't in the food, it was in the freedom. No one asked about my parents. No one brought up property deeds or court filings. There were no hidden insults, no seating politics, no obligations. Just the sound of people feeling safe. Halfway through dessert, Ellie wandered into the hallway and stopped in front of the framed watercolor above the radiator. "Is that your grandfather?" she asked. I nodded. "He left this house to someone who saw it as more than wood." She tilted her head. "Looks like he knew what he was doing." I didn't reply, just smiled and turned back to the kitchen where Vanessa was refilling her glass and quietly humming along to the song on the speakers. Later, after the guests left and the dishes sat drying in the rack, I opened my laptop. I had been staring at the form for days. The cursor blinked beside the words, "business name." I typed Harper Studio LLC, click. Registered. Vanessa helped me fold the throw blankets before she left. At the door, she hesitated again, as if waiting for a cue I hadn't given. But she didn't need it. "He'd be proud," she said softly, nodding toward the hallway, where his portrait still watched over the house. For the first time, I didn't reject the sentiment. For the first time, I believed it. I dropped the last old key into the backyard well. It made no sound. The morning air bit at my ankles, but I didn't move. The grass was cold and slick beneath my bare feet, dew soaking into the hem of my pajama pants. The key sat in my palm, weightless, now stripped of authority, meaning memory. Margaret gave it to me after the refinance months before it all unraveled. "In case you ever need to let yourself in," she'd said like an olive branch. Or a leash. I had kept it in the back of a drawer ever since, unwilling to carry it, unable to throw it away. Until now. The sun hadn't fully broken through the horizon yet. Just a soft haze glowing between the trees, smearing golden light across the fence line. My breath puffed in front of me, slow and steady, like a ritual I didn't fully understand, but knew I had to complete. I walked to the old well at the far edge of the yard. As a kid, I'd imagined it led to some hidden cavern where secrets were stored. Once, when Margaret called my silver locket cheap junk, I'd buried it here. I was 7. That was the first time I felt the need to hide parts of myself just to survive their version of love. Now I had no more reason to hide. I looked at the key one last time, dull brass worn teeth, a slight bend near the neck. A perfect symbol of false inclusion. Then I opened my hand. The key slipped from my fingers, vanished into the dark well. No clang, no echo. Just the clean silence of something finally let go. I waited for a reaction inside myself. Regret, doubt, melancholy. None came. Only a strange lightness, like I'd unshouldered a weight I hadn't realized I still carried. Back inside, I lit a single candle in the living room. The house was quiet, just the soft hum of the fridge and the creak of the floor settling around me. I sat cross-legged on the rug palms, resting on my knees. Inhale. Exhale. The silence used to feel like absence. Now it felt like space. I looked around, walls, repainted furniture, rearranged, no shadows of them left. Just me, my life, my choices. I whispered, almost amused by the simplicity of it, "I am not who they left behind. I am who stayed and grew." The original deed sat on the coffee table in a fireproof box. I had labeled it yesterday with a thick black marker, Claire Harper, sole owner. No titles, no footnotes, no disclaimers. I ran a finger along the edge of the lid before sealing it shut. Not revenge, not even justice, just reclamation. I stood up and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above the fireplace. Hair, messy, eyes, soft candlelight flickering behind me. I studied that reflection, the curve of my shoulders, the ease in my jaw, and I said it aloud just to hear it in the room. Not revenge. Reclamation. The house didn't respond. It didn't need to. It had already become mine. She didn't burn the house down. She simply claimed it one truth at a time until silence had nowhere left to hide. Justice didn't arrive with sirens or fury, but with steady hands and a door finally closed. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Because sometimes reclaiming what's yours is the loudest answer to those who tried to erase you. Like, share and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if this story spoke to you, or 2 if you're still waiting for your own justice.